So recently, the concept of universal basic income, it's very popular. A lot of people are suggesting it, and even during the US presidential election 2020 has been mentioned a couple of times as well. Someone even tried to run for the US presidential election race and suggesting universal basic income as one of his key policies. So this made me really curious whether it is actually something that would work. How would that impact our society? And what does it mean for the economy? So before we start, this channel is dedicated to busy full-time professionals like yourself and learn how to invest in the stock market so you can get a higher return over a long period of time. And the goal here is really to help you save or make an extra 1K, 10K, or even 100K from investing. So I just want to celebrate another success story within Investing Accelerator where Roy sold his BRKB for 57% profit, Disney at 42% profit, and Chef Warehouse for 27% profit. And this is amazing, and congratulations, Roy. So this month, I'm looking to help an additional 15 people without a financial background to master investing, and the stretch goal is 20 people. So if you're interested in joining Investing Accelerator, there's more details within the description, the free case study. So some of the key considerations when looking at universal basic income is, what if the province or the state covers your expenses? Would you still go back to work? Would you get educated? And right now, a growing number of countries are considering UBI, Universal Basic Income, as an alternative to welfare. Right now, 34 million people in the United States is below the poverty line, and that's approximately 10% of the population. And when you think about the future, there's massive amounts of automation. Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're all pushing robotics, including Tesla as well. So in the future, we can produce more than ever before and needing less and less manpower. At least that's what we believe for now. And with that level of automation, it should create even less jobs, which means more and more people will be unemployed. And that's why some of us think that universal basic income can be a good idea. So what is UBI? So in this video, we're going to talk about UBI in the version where it's the minimum amount of income you need to sustain life. In the United States, that's approximately $1,000 a month, which is $12,000 a year. And this means you'll get $12,000 without tax, and you can do whatever you want with it. Sounds interesting, right? Now, in one of the videos I watched about universal basic income, is from a very popular channel. In a nutshell, they talk about universal basic income as a way to transfer wealth from the wealthy to the less fortunate. And when you think about that, the argument is that there's no inflation. And in this video, we're going to talk about both versions of it. One is a transfer wealth, and we're going to talk about some of the problems. We're also going to talk about issuing more money for UBI and how that would impact the economy. Now, the number one concern when it comes to universal basic income is, if this exists, will poor people waste it on booze and alcohol? People will start working, right? And in 2013, a World Bank study actually assessed whether poor people will waste their handouts on alcohol and tobacco. And surprisingly, the answer is no, they don't. What they find is that the richer you are, the more likely you'll be spending on alcohol and drugs because you can afford it. So this is actually interesting because the evidence points to the fact that the more disposable income you have, you'll be spending money on alcohol and drugs. So in a way, giving the universal basic income to the wealthy people will be a waste of money. And the lazy and the drunk poor person is actually a stereotype, and it is not necessarily true for most of them. So the concern number two is, will people stop working if they get a UBI? And in 1970, in Canada, there's actually an experiment where they tested, and only 1% of the population in Canada turns out to be not working after receiving UBI because they mainly want to take care of their kids. And that is quite reasonable. So it's basically just like a maternity leave, but extended version. And on average, the people who reduce their working hours is less than 10%. And what's interesting is that people are actually want to be productive, and they'll use that income to take time off so then they can go back to study and improve themselves so that they can become more productive in the market. And I think this is a very positive experimental results because what we want to know and to see is that people are reinvesting in themselves in terms of knowledge so that they make themselves more relevant in the market instead of trying to go work at, let's say, a fast food chain or something that is not a fit for their skill set in the short term just to make some money so that they can get through the dip, especially in the coronavirus time right now. Now, the concern number 3 is really, will people still do what we call hard jobs? So for example, like plumbers, like farmers, picking up garbage, so on and so forth. And based on a survey in 2016, 33% of US employees are actually engaged at work. 16% are actively miserable, and 51% are physically present. So they're just showing up here so that they can collect a paycheck. And when you think about it, even with or without universal basic income, this is an underlying problem within our economy, not just within US, but outside of US as well, because I see that a lot. People just showing up to collect their paycheck because that's what they're told to do. With universal basic income, people have more flexibility and they're able to choose what they want to do, and they're less reliant on the income that they get from the job as the only source, because we're always scared of not being able to pay rent. We're always scared of not being able to make up the mortgage payments. So then there's a foreclosure on our house. So I just want to share 2 case studies with you. The first one is experiment, or actually something that the South Koreans have done, and it's actually reported by the Wall Street Journal, so you can check out that video as well. And basically, in 2020, one of the provinces within South Korea issued $220 every 3 months to 13 million people during the pandemic. And you can spend it on whatever you want, no questions asked. Now, there is a catch to this, is that the people need to spend it within their neighborhood, so within the province. And South Korea is one of the most automated countries in the world, and 15% of the jobs are expected to be automated by 2024. So that's actually quite soon. And they are preparing for a future with a lot of robots in it. So one of the people they interviewed within the province was actually a university student, and you can actually watch the video there. So the university student is able to quit her part-time job, and she's able to focus on completing her college degree. And each of the person within the province is given a credit card that she can spend locally. And this is the way for the government to track the person's expenses. And you can't spend money on international businesses like McDonald's and so on, but you can bring businesses to local businesses. So that means the money is issued within the province and it circulates within the province as well. So that's a key constraint. And basically the feedback from local businesses are saying that it helped them bring in a lot of revenue. So then that creates a vibrant economy that are consuming the services within the province. And because they're all using this credit card, the government can track people's expenses through the credit card. So one of the concerns that was brought up by the associate professor in University of Pennsylvania is that it would raise some privacy concerns. Obviously, if the government is tracking your expenses, then would you be worried? And I think in the Western world, we are taught to be very worried. It's infringing on my rights. But when you think about it, well, would you rather have $1,000 a month and give up a little bit of privacy to make sure that you're spending within the local economy? Or would you not have the $1,000 at all? And I think during the pandemic, it should be very clear that you want to get that $1,000. And of course, if you want to protect your privacy, then just don't get the $1,000. Don't spend a single dollar on it. Then that will actually solve the problem. So when you think about that carefully, privacy is actually not a big concern. Now, for South Korea, they actually only analyze the data on an aggregate basis and on an anonymous basis. So then they just look at it on a summarized level. And they do ask for your permission before they collect the data from you. Now, obviously, right now, we are becoming more data conscious and we understand the value of data. And companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, they are collecting our data, and they're also trying not to collect our data as much in a way. But when you think about Google and Facebook, their profit is completely driven by data and knowing exactly who you are. And most of the time, you enjoy using these apps and services for free. But what if you can get paid for it? And this is actually one of the ideas I'll bring back when we talk about potential creative solutions. Because when you're looking at your credit card data, there is the location, there's the exact vendor you purchased, the amount, how often, the frequency. And what if just by sacrificing a little bit of data privacy, which you are already doing with Facebook and Google, MasterCard, Visa card, and so on, you get paid for it? Because right now, other companies sell your data and you don't get paid for it. But what if you can? And that's going to be an interesting hypothesis later in this video. Now, the second concern that was raised by the associate professor in UPenn was that what if you just spend the $1,000 on the local economy and you saved up your own money to spend it on international goods? So then the money within the province can still go out. And I was thinking very carefully. Initially, this sounds like a big red flag. Everyone will be against it. But if you think very carefully about what she's saying, I have created this chart to explain what I mean. So there are two types of people. So one is above the poverty line and one is below the poverty line. And then on the other axis, you'll get goods within the local economy that is less expensive, within the local economy that is more expensive than international goods, like oranges, iPhones, mangoes, and so on. And I'm using BC as an example because blueberries are very cheap in BC, but they're very expensive in another country because we locally grow our blueberries here. So let's look at this chart. Now, if you want to buy something and it is cheap locally, then you will buy it anyways, right? Because it's cheaper here to buy it in BC or whatnot. And there's less money to spend on international goods for people below the poverty line. So that is fine. But what if you want to buy something that is more expensive locally, so then you want to buy the international version? So for example, California oranges, where it is cheaper to be produced in California and is more difficult to produce in BC, which is more expensive. That's why you don't see BC oranges. And when you think about that, if you really want to eat an orange in Vancouver, you will buy that anyways if you're above the poverty line. And what the $1,000 or the UBI allows you to do is to spend that money within the local economy first, which guarantees a certain level of income within the local economy. And what you do with your own disposable income, your salary, that's none of the government's business anyways. And if you really want to eat an orange from California, then by all means go ahead. And when you're looking at people below the poverty line, it's the same thing. And that's what's important, because you would spend the money on blueberries and other goods produced within the province first, and then for any extra money, you will spend it on whatever you want, which is your freedom. So you shouldn't be concerned about people saving their own money and spend it on international goods, because you have a guaranteed source of revenue for your local economy by issuing UBI and restricted within the local economy. So the results as of June, which is middle of this year, 50% of the South Koreans are supportive of UBI. And that is very positive, because when you think about it, before UBI was even a concept, 0% of people are supportive of it. So this is not something that has been around for many, many years. This is something that is picking up with a lot of traction in a short amount of time. So when you think about the trend, it is kind of going like this. So in the future, more than 50% of South Koreans will be supportive of it. Now, in terms of case study number 2, it's from Finland. And the researchers have selected 2,000 individuals between 25 to 58 within Finland to each get 560 euro tax-free. And they get it each month. And after a year, they did an interview on a specific person. And his name is Mika. And the feedback for UBI is actually quite positive. Basically, UBI encourages you to work. This is actually one of the quotes from Mika, is that 560 euro per month is not enough to live on, but it gives him the flexibility for a family vacation and potentially to start his own business. And I think this is a very important quote, not because he wants to go on a vacation with his family, but it's because he can potentially start a business. Because when you think about starting a business, there's a lot of risk. And most business wouldn't make through what they call a dip. So it's kind of like a J curve. So you first incur some loss before you figure out your business model, you start making money, and then you start going back up again. So if you cannot go through this dip, your business will fail. And oftentimes, businesses don't go through that dip. And with universal basic income, it makes the dip easier because it gives you that base level income, so then it pushes the graph a little bit higher for you as an entrepreneur. And one of the interesting quotes is that he's not sold on receiving the cash when you are wealthy. And I do agree with him, because when you're making quite a bit of money, even if you receive $1,000 a month extra, it doesn't really help. It'll just sit in your bank account and it would be wasted per se. Now, the biggest concern when it comes to the Finland study is funding. Researchers only had enough money to give it to around 2,000 unemployed individuals and not more. So when you think about handing out money, the biggest problem, of course, is not the process of handing it out. The biggest problem is, where is the money coming from? And that's what we're going to explore in a later video. The second concern is politicians. People are always going to be debating on how to reform the system, how to best give out the money. And if we rely on politicians to make changes within our society, it's going to take forever. So the question is there a faster and a better way to create this change? Because innovation and automation is happening at an accelerating rate. And if we wait for politicians to act, they'll never be fast enough to meet the needs of the people. So that's what we're going to explore in a bit. So I thought of a couple of ideas that might solve this problem. So stay tuned. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the economics of funding universal basic income through the government and whether that would work or not. So stay tuned for the next video.